If you're older, you remember when something called polite society existed. Decorum, manners, self-restraint, civility mattered, but it may be gone forever. Hi, I'm Rex Rogers, and this is episode number 215 of Discerning What is Best, a podcast applying unchanging biblical principles in a rapidly changing world and a Christian worldview to current issues and everyday life. It does not take much to illustrate that Western civilization is on the edge. This thing we call organized society is not so organized. People of all ages, but perhaps more so the young, seem to believe that they can do anything, anytime, to anyone, any way they wish. Language is crude and lewd. I began watching a movie recently on a cable channel and was not 30 minutes into it before I realized the producers were enamored with the F word. Not just the thugs, but the cops. Not just men, but women. Not just the antagonist, but the protagonist. Everybody dropped F-bombs as an all-purpose means of conveying their toughness or frustration or anger. What this said to me is that the writers were not very good. They did not possess the creativity or the intellectual depth to write dialogue or access a vocabulary capable of sharing wide-ranging emotions without falling back on a vulgar term. Apparently, they think this level of crudeness is how the American populace talks. Maybe it is, but thankfully not folks around me. And by the way, I switched the channel. On another front, the left, or so-called progressive politicians, many Democrats, to be frank about it, are recording short videos in which they use profanity, supposedly to reach the young American male, but which actually makes them sound rather juvenile and coarse. National politicians are getting more aggressive, not only in their language, but at times behavior, showing up unannounced and challenging security, like California Senator Alex Padilla recently did at a Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem press conference, or like New Jersey Representative LaMonica McIver did at an ICE detention facility. House Minority Leader New York Representative Hakeem Jeffries posed with a baseball bat, supposedly to demonstrate his tough approach to legislation. Others scream and otherwise disrupt congressional sessions. At town halls in their districts, and in one-on-one meetings with constituents and activists, even more moderate Democratic House colleagues are facing a growing thrum of demands to break the rules, fight dirty, and not be afraid to get hurt. Another lawmaker told Axios that constituents say civility isn't working and to get ready for violence, to fight to protect our democracy. And another said it's like the Roman Colosseum. People just want more and more of this spectacle. Some Democrats are calling on their elected representatives to engage in violence against policies of the Trump administration. Militant allies of the progressive Democratic movement are resorting to violence in an effort to obstruct the president's enforcement of federal immigration law. Political protest is no longer mostly peaceful, nor is it apparently about a controversy. It's planned, prolonged violence. It's an excuse to run amok, to throw rocks, or worse, Molotov cocktails. Protest is now more performance outrage, a sampling of anarchy, than it is intelligent expressions of disagreement offering other points of view. We know this because media sometimes interviews protesters in the streets, asking them what they hope to achieve, and they offer no response, or an obscene response like flipping the finger, or they just parrot talking points they cannot explain. Then they go back to their feral behavior, damaging or looting businesses in their own communities, destroying cars or shouting slogans at law enforcement. Deliberative discussion and disagreement have gone out the window. Now anyone who opposes an open border is called a racist. Support the idea of voter ID or photo identification for national elections, or even holding national elections on one day with limited mail-in privileges, and you're a bigot, you're anti-minorities, or you're destroying democracy. Wish for better science regarding vaccines, and you're a purveyor of misinformation. Support efforts to stop waste, fraud, and abuse in government spending and programs, and you're called cruel, a person who does not care about the poor or needy. Say you are against abortions, and you're anti-women, anti-reproductive health care. Reproductive health care is an illogical oxymoron anyway, because abortions stop reproduction entirely. Lawlessness is no longer limited and infrequent. Portland struggles with Antifa and other extremist groups. Chicago is once again the nation's murder capital. Lawfare, The strategic use of law to damage or delegitimize or hinder an opponent, often under the guise of a semblance of legality or justice, is now commonplace. Leftist politicians encouraging or specifically calling for violence against those whose politics they oppose, including law enforcement officials, is now a weekly occurrence. New York City recently elected a self-professed Democratic socialist with clear communist principles as the Democrat candidate for city mayor. He has the audacity to call for the arrest of U.S. ICE agents or Mr. Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel. And he's repeatedly on record affirming the slogan, globalize the Intifada. He's anti-Semitic, anti-capitalism and free enterprise, and anti-American. This is the best New York City can do? The Pride movement seems to be in some retreat, with corporations announcing they will no longer support or promote Pride events, finally. But Pride parades are still taking place around the country, as are drag queen story hours featuring dissolute, decadent behavior and depraved presentations for kids. The parades are intentionally structured to be loud and proud, meaning they go for shock value, naked or nearly naked prurient participants, sexually exploitative and erotic accoutrements, debased and debauched dances, men with men and women with women doing things that should not be done at all, let alone in public. No better, or I should say worse, example of the phrase feral human exists than these Sodom and Gomorrah parades. Thanks to Riley Gaines and the Trump administration, men claiming to be trans women dominating girls and women's athletics is now in retreat. Decisions by the University of Pennsylvania and the NCAA evidence a grudging drawback on trans insanity. I say grudging because I think this is being done because the entities believe they will lose money, not because they have found their moral compass. The University of Pennsylvania says it will apologize to female athletes and is rescinding athletic medals from trans individuals who got them in women's events. At long last, common sense has returned with the NCAA, stating that student athletes assigned male at birth may not compete on NCAA women's teams. But this trans movement has not gone away. One, because universities still retain their local authority to decide these matters as they wish. Two, because thousands of people have been ideologically brainwashed into this social delusion. And three, because hundreds more individuals possess some kind of vested economic interest in maintaining a pro-trans posture. Add to this in the U.S. that the younger adults are significantly more likely to identify as transgender or non-binary compared to older adults. No surprise there. Approximately 5.1% of adults under 30 identify as transgender or non-binary. This compares to 1.6% of 30 to 49-year-olds, or 0.3% of those 50 and older. Gen Z and Gen Alpha are coming of age in an era when biological reality is set aside for social preference. This big lie is not going away. Now, we've pursued identity politics and licentiousness, creating a spiritual and cultural vacuum at the profound expense of e pluribus unum. We are threatening Western civilization. We are a people harassed and helpless, like sheep without a shepherd. The West and America need to restore a sense of transcendent purpose. America needs a revival of the moral ideals that once made this country flourish. Belief in the sovereign God, truth, liberty, individual responsibility, virtue, family. God grant that we may see this renewal. Well, we'll see you again soon. This podcast is about discerning what is best. If you find this thought-provoking and helpful, follow us on your favorite podcast platform. For more Christian commentary, see my website, REXM as in Martin. It's rexmrogers.com, or check my YouTube channel at Dr. Rex Rogers. And remember, it is for freedom that Christ has set us free. Stand firm.